started with a single notification. Motion detected. Living room camera. I frowned, my eyes adjusting to the dim glow of my phone. I had already been in bed for nearly an hour, scrolling absent-mindedly through my feed. The house was silent, and I lived alone. I tapped the notification, opening the CCTV app. The live feed flickered into view. My blood ran cold. There I was, sitting on the couch in the living room. Not just someone who looked like me. It was me. Same messy bun, same pajamas, same phone in my hands. The only problem was, I was upstairs in bed. I blinked rapidly, convincing myself it was some kind of glitch, maybe an old recording playing by mistake. But no, the person on the screen shifted slightly, bringing their phone closer to their face, just like I was doing at that very moment. A wave of nausea hit me. This wasn't possible. My hands trembled as I waved one in front of my phone camera, half expecting the figure in the footage to do the same. But they didn't. Instead, they slowly lowered their phone and turned their head. They were looking directly at the camera now. I stopped breathing. It wasn't just looking, it was staring, unblinking. And even though the video had no audio, I could almost feel the silence stretching between us, suffocating, thick. Then they stood up. I scrambled upright in bed, my heart hammering against my ribs. The figure moved toward the camera with slow, deliberate steps, each one sending a fresh wave of terror through me. My throat tightened as they stopped inches away from the lens, their face still eerily calm. Then they smiled. It wasn't just any smile. It was mine, my own mannerisms, the slight quirk of my lips, the way my dimples formed. I swiped the screen in blind panic, switching between different camera angles, desperate to prove to myself this was some kind of technical error. But every feed was normal. The kitchen was empty. The hallway was empty. The front door was locked. I switched back to the living room. The couch was empty. The figure I was gone. My stomach twisted into a knot. The clock at the top of my screen read 3:12 a.m. I was drenched in sweat, my breath coming in short gasps. I listened for any sound, any creak of the floorboards, any hint that something, was moving through my house. Nothing, just silence. I clenched my phone, forcing myself to breathe. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe I was so exhausted that I had dreamed the whole thing. Then my phone vibrated. Motion detected. Upstairs hallway camera. I choked on a breath. My head snapped toward my bedroom door. The hallway was just outside. And I wasn't alone. The air in my bedroom grew thick, suffocating. My phone trembled in my hands as I hesitated before tapping the notification. Motion detected. Upstairs hallway camera. I swallowed hard and switched to the live feed. First, I saw nothing. Just the dim hallway stretching out in both directions. The soft glow of the nightlight casting eerie shadows along the walls. Then I noticed it. The door to my bedroom, my door, was slightly open. Just an inch, but I knew I had shut it before getting into bed. My pulse pounded against my skull as I kept staring at the screen, willing nothing to move. But just as that thought crossed my mind, something shifted in the shadows. A figure, standing just outside my door. I couldn't make out any details. The image was too dark, too grainy, but I knew what I was looking at. It was me. No, not me. The thing that had been sitting on my couch. The thing that had smiled at the camera. I held my breath, my body frozen with terror. The figure stood perfectly still, as if it were waiting, watching. Then, in one smooth motion, it raised its hand. I almost dropped my phone as I realized what it was doing. It was reaching for the doorknob. My doorknob. I launched out of bed, heart hammering, slamming my weight against the door before it could open further. My shaking hands fumbled for the lock, twisting it into place just as I felt resistance on the other side. A pause. I pressed my ear against the wood, straining to hear any movement. Silence. Had I imagined the pressure on the door? Had it even been real? Then, tap, tap, tap. My blood turned to ice. 3 soft knocks. Deliberate. Rhythmic. I stumbled backward, clutching my phone to my chest. The live feed was still open, and I dared one last glance at the screen. The figure was still outside my door. And it was smiling. Then, without warning, it moved. Not like a person. Not like anything I had ever seen before. 1 second it was standing there, the next gone. The hallway was empty. I held my breath, waiting, listening. Then my phone vibrated again. Motion detected. Bedroom camera. The breath hitched in my throat as I looked up from my screen. The closet door creaked open. The closet door eased open, the hinges whispering against the silence. My breath locked in my throat as I stared into the blackness beyond, waiting, dreading. What would come next? The phone slipped from my trembling fingers, the screen casting an eerie glow on my shaking hands. I had locked the bedroom door, but I hadn't thought about the closet. A low creak came from within, barely audible over the sound of my own heartbeat hammering against my ribs. Then, a shadow shifted inside. It wasn't fast. It didn't lunge or crawl. It simply moved, a slow, almost lazy shifting in the darkness. Like it knew I was watching. Like it knew I was frozen, paralyzed, helpless. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't move. The air grew heavy, pressing against my chest like an invisible weight. Then, a hand emerged, pale, thin fingers curled around the edge of the closet door. My stomach twisted as I realized something was wrong. The fingers were too long, the joints bending at unnatural angles. Then a second hand appeared, and with a slow, deliberate motion, it stepped out. I gasped, slapping a hand over my mouth before I could make a sound. It was me. No, not me. Not exactly. It had my face, my hair, my clothes. But there was something off. The skin was too smooth, almost plastic in the dim light. The eyes, my eyes, were hollow, too wide, as if someone had stretched my face over something that wasn't human. Then it smiled. That same horrible, knowing smile. I scrambled backward until my back hit the headboard, my breath coming in sharp, panicked gasps. Took a step forward, then another, and then tilted its head, like it was listening. I barely had time to process the movement before it suddenly lunged. I screamed, and everything went black. I woke up to the sound of my alarm. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, casting soft golden patterns on the floor. My heart was still racing, my body drenched in sweat. I sat up slowly, my head throbbing. Had it been a dream? A nightmare so vivid that it felt real? I exhaled shakily, rubbing my face. Then I saw my phone, lying next to me on the bed. The screen was still on. The CCTV app was open, and the last recorded notification glowed at the top of the screen. Motion detected. Bedroom camera. With a trembling hand, I tapped the file and watched. The footage started at 3:17 a.m. The bedroom was dark. The closet door was wide open. Then movement. I watched in horror as something stepped out. It was me, but not just stepping out. It was walking toward the bed, walking toward me, and just before the footage cut to static, I saw myself lean down and whisper something into my own sleeping ear. I turned the volume all the way up, hands shaking. The static hissed softly. Then, barely audible, a voice, my voice, whispered, "You shouldn't have looked." The screen went black. I never turned the cameras on again. It started as nothing more than a curiosity. Every night, at exactly 3:09 a.m., my security cameras would send me a notification. Motion detected. Front yard. At first, I thought it was just the wind or maybe a stray animal. But when I checked the recordings, there was nothing. Just stillness. Yet, the motion alerts kept coming. After a week, I started to get uneasy. One night, I stayed up to check the footage in real time. My phone buzzed right on schedule. Motion detected. Front yard. I opened the live feed. The yard was empty. The street beyond was quiet. But something felt wrong. The camera was picking up movement, but I saw nothing. It was as if something invisible was triggering the system. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, waiting for something, anything, to appear. Then, out of nowhere, the motion alert switched. Motion detected. Front door. My stomach dropped. I flipped to the front door camera. The door handle twisted. I shot up from my chair, my pulse hammering in my ears. The door was locked. I was sure of it. But the handle moved again, this time harder. I bolted to the peephole, pressing my eye against the glass. Nothing. The porch was empty. But as I stood there, gripping the knob from the inside, I felt it. Presence. Something was out there. Something my cameras couldn't see. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. I held my breath, waiting. The motion alerts went silent. The air in the house felt heavy, thick with something unnatural. I checked the footage again, rewinding, watching frame by frame. That's when I saw it. At 3:09 a.m., just before the handle moved, the footage glitched, a single frame of distortion. I paused it, and for a split second, barely visible in the static. A shadow, standing at my front door. But no person, no shape, just a black mass, stretching upward, featureless, watching. I slammed my laptop shut. I didn't sleep that night. The next night, I forced myself to stay awake. I wanted answers. I armed myself with a baseball bat and a knife from the kitchen, setting them on my nightstand. My laptop was open, streaming the live feed from all the cameras. The clock read 2:58 a.m. I waited. The house was silent. The only sound was my own breathing, shallow and uneven. I kept my eyes glued to the screen. 3:08 a.m. I tightened my grip on the edge of my desk, my pulse quickening. 3:09 a.m. Motion detected. Front yard. I clicked the notification immediately. The yard looked normal. The trees stood motionless. The grass undisturbed. No movement. Then something changed. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable at first. A darkening at the edges of the screen, like the camera was struggling to process something. Then static. It lasted only a second, but when the feed came back, the porch light flickered. The motion alert switched. Motion detected. Front door. I held my breath. The doorknob twisted again. This time harder. I felt my stomach twist into a knot. The handle didn't just rattle, it turned all the way, testing the lock. A long, deliberate attempt to open the door. My throat went dry. I knew what I had to do. I forced my legs to move, grabbing the bat as I approached the front door. I didn't dare look through the peephole this time. My phone buzzed. Motion detected. Back door. I stopped cold. No, this wasn't normal. This wasn't someone trying to break in. This was something else. I flipped to the back door camera feed, my heart thudding painfully in my chest. The same thing was happening. The knob twisted, jiggled, testing. It wasn't a person. No burglar tries both doors at the same time. No human moves like that, appearing at the back door the moment they fail at the front. I took a shaky breath, backing away slowly. The air felt wrong, like the walls were pressing in. I held the bat so tightly my fingers ached. Then, just as suddenly as it began, silence. The notifications stopped. The motion vanished. The house was still again. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I forced myself to watch the recordings. I had to know. I fast-forwarded to 3:09 a.m. and hit play. Just like before, the front yard seemed empty. The motion alert triggered, but there was nothing there. Then came the glitch. I paused the frame. The shadow was back. But this time it was closer. I could make out the shape more clearly, tall, impossibly thin, distorted, as if it was flickering between two different realities. It wasn't walking. It wasn't moving in any normal way. It was just appearing closer and closer with each frame. Then the front door footage. I watched as the knob turned, rattled. But the scariest part wasn't that. It was the other shadow, the one inside the house. My stomach dropped. At the exact moment the front door handle turned, a second shadow appeared at the end of my hallway. Inside my house. The camera's timestamp flickered. The shadow moved. I felt bile rise in my throat. In the next frame, the shadow was closer. The next, closer still. And then, the footage cut out. Black screen. Nothing. No error message, no corruption. Just gone. I slammed my laptop shut, my entire body shaking. I didn't know what scared me more, that something had been inside my house last night, or that I never heard it leave. I didn't sleep the next night. I didn't even try. Instead, I sat in my living room, every light in the house turned on, my laptop open with the security cameras streaming live. I had my phone in one hand and the baseball bat in the other, gripping it so tightly my knuckles ached. I kept replaying the footage in my head. The way the shadow had moved. The way it had been inside my house. The way the cameras cut out right before I could see where it went. And worst of all, I never heard it leave, which meant I wasn't sure it was gone. The thought sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. I checked the time. 2:57 a.m. Almost time. The house was dead silent, the kind of quiet that felt wrong, like something was waiting. I kept my eyes glued to the front yard camera, my breath coming in shallow gasps. 3:08 a.m. The porch light flickered. My phone vibrated in my lap. Motion detected. Front yard. My fingers tightened around the bat. The feed looked the same as it always did. An empty yard, no movement, no sign of anything there. But I knew better now. I watched closely, scanning every inch of the screen. The camera glitched once, then twice. A single frame of something appeared, too fast to see clearly. Then, motion detected. Back door. My heart nearly stopped. I switched to the back camera. The shadow was there. This time, it wasn't flickering at the edge of the screen. It wasn't waiting in the distance. It was standing directly in front of the back door. And worse, the door was open. I shot to my feet, my vision going blurry with panic. No. I had locked it. I always locked it. I grabbed my phone and checked the hallway camera. My stomach turned to ice. There was something in the house. A figure stood just at the edge of the hallway, barely visible in the dim glow from the living room. Tall, unnaturally thin. A shape that didn't belong in this world. It wasn't moving. It was watching me. The air around me grew heavy, pressing in from all sides. I gripped the bat, every nerve screaming at me to run, but I couldn't move. Then, the lights flickered. The figure twitched. Not like a person. Not like anything human. 1 second it was at the end of the hallway. The next it was closer. The next closer still. Each time the light blinked, it jumped forward, impossibly fast. The air left my lungs. I could feel it now, the pressure in the room shifting, something crawling beneath my skin, whispering just beyond the range of hearing. Then the lights went out. Everything went black. Couldn't see. Couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. A sound broke through the darkness. The quiet click of a door closing. Then, a voice. Soft. Almost right behind me. You left it open. The lights came back. The house was empty. The back door was locked. Everything was normal. Except for one thing. On my phone screen, the security feed showed the last frame before the cameras cut out. The front yard. The shadow was there. Standing in the street now. Farther away. Watching. And I knew. It wasn't trying to break in anymore. It had already been inside. And now, it was just waiting. It started as a simple habit. I liked checking my home security footage. It wasn't paranoia, just a weird little routine before bed. A way to make sure everything was normal. But then, something changed. One night, I noticed something strange in the archived recordings. Some of the videos were repeating. Not like a glitch. Not like the cameras recorded the same scene twice by mistake. No, I was repeating. I watched in growing horror as I saw myself, on different nights wearing different clothes, doing the exact same thing. The same hand movements. The same shifting on the couch. The same absent-minded glance toward the camera. Word for word, I spoke the same phrases, sometimes days apart. It didn't make sense. I ran the footage side by side, comparing timestamps. There was no way this was a coincidence. And then I found the worst one. A recording from 3 nights ago. I sat on the couch, scrolling my phone. Normal. But then, in perfect synchronization with another recording from a different night, I stood up, turned to the camera, and whispered something. I felt my pulse hammering against my skull. I turned up the volume. The audio crackled, the whisper barely more than a breath. Then I heard it. Did you finally notice? The me in the video smiled. And then the footage cut out. I slammed my laptop shut. I was done watching. But I made a mistake. Because when I looked up, I was standing. Exactly like in the recording. And I didn't remember getting up. I couldn't move. My breath caught in my throat as I stood there, frozen. Exactly like in the recording. My arms felt stiff. My posture too rigid. As if something else was holding me in place. I forced myself to breathe. This is just in your head. Just some bizarre coincidence. But deep down, I didn't believe that. Because my body didn't feel like my own. Slowly, I forced myself to sit back down. My muscles aching as if I had been standing for hours. My fingers trembled as I reached for my laptop. I had to watch the rest. I reopened the security footage, scrolling through the archived recordings. My gut twisted with every clip I played. There were more. Dozens of videos, all showing the same thing, me acting out the same motions, saying the same words. Over and over. Some from months ago. Some from years. And in every single one, at the end of the video, I would stand up, look at the camera, and whisper those same words. Did you finally notice? I swallowed hard. My skin felt ice cold. Then I found one I hadn't seen before. Dated tomorrow. A recording that hadn't happened yet. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the play button. Every instinct screamed at me not to watch. But I had to know. I clicked it. The footage started in my living room just like always. There I was, sitting on the couch, scrolling my phone. Then, I shifted, glanced at the camera. My stomach twisted in anticipation. But this time, something was different. The me in the video suddenly stopped moving. No blinking, no breathing, just stillness. Then, the lights in the video flickered. For a single brief moment, I wasn't alone. A shadow stood behind me, tall, unmoving, watching. The light returned and the figure was gone. The me in the video didn't react. Then, the worst part. I stood up, turned to the camera, and smiled. Not my normal smile. This was too wide. My lips stretching in an unnatural curve. Like something wearing my skin pretending to be me. Then I spoke. Not a whisper this time. Clear. Direct. Speaking to me. You are going to do this. And you won't remember why. Then, the screen cut to black. My laptop slammed shut before I could stop myself. The room suddenly felt wrong. The air too thick. The silence unnatural. I reached for my phone, my hands shaking. I needed to call someone. Anyone. Just to hear another voice. But as I lifted my phone, my reflection in the dark screen smiled back at me. And I hadn't moved my face. I dropped my phone like it burned me. It hit the floor with a dull thud. The screen still reflecting that wrong version of my face. The smile that didn't belong to me. Couldn't breathe. My mind screamed for logic, for an explanation. A trick of the light, a glitch in the screen, exhaustion playing tricks on me. But deep down I already knew. I knew this wasn't normal. Because as I stared at my phone, my real face twisted in horror. The reflection didn't change. It just kept smiling. Then, slowly, the mouth in the screen moved. I heard no sound, but I understood the words. It's time. My body locked up. A deep, pulsing nausea rolled through me as I felt my limbs tense, muscles stiffening like I was suddenly under someone else's control. No, not someone else. Something else. My vision blurred as my legs moved on their own. No. But it didn't matter what I wanted. My body was standing, arms at my sides, my eyes shifting toward the camera in the corner of the room. I felt like I was inside myself but not in control, trapped in a body that was no longer mine. Step by step, I turned to face the camera. Just like in the recordings. My lips parted, and I felt the words bubbling up from my throat. My own voice, not my own. The whisper came before I could stop it. Did you finally notice? I felt a tear roll down my cheek as my mouth twisted into a wide, unnatural grin. This wasn't me. I was being made to repeat it. Over and over. For years. And then, a knock. I nearly choked on my own breath. The trance shattered. and I stumbled backward, slamming into the coffee table. My body felt like it had been submerged in ice, every limb heavy and slow. The knock came again, 3 times, rhythmic, precise. The front door. I turned toward it, still gasping for air. Who the hell would be at my door in the middle of the night? No one ever came here. I grabbed my phone with a shaky hand, flipping to the live feed of the front door camera. My stomach dropped. There was someone standing there. Person, no, not a person. It was me, standing on the porch, staring at the door, waiting. The knock came again. I watched the footage, paralyzed, as the version of me outside slowly tilted its head. Then, without breaking eye contact with the camera, it smiled and whispered something. I turned the volume all the way up, my fingers barely able to hold on to the phone. The voice was distorted, stretched, but I still recognized it. My own voice. Let me in. The screen went black. The knocking stopped. And then, a whisper. This time it wasn't coming from the phone. It was coming from behind me, right next to my ear. You already did. The lights flickered, and everything went dark. The next morning, my security footage showed nothing unusual. No strange recordings. No shadows. No repeating movements. Nothing at all. Except for one last clip. A single video file dated tonight. It hasn't happened yet. But I already know what I'm going to see. And this time, I don't think I'll be able to stop it. It started with the notifications. I hadn't changed any settings, hadn't adjusted the sensitivity, but suddenly, the cameras were picking up movement every night. I would wake up to a list of alerts, all around the same time, 2:47 a.m. I checked the recordings, expecting to see stray animals, maybe tree branches swaying in the wind. But every single time, the footage showed nothing. Just an empty yard, an empty street, stillness. And yet, the notifications kept coming. Last night, something changed. I woke up to a fresh alert. Motion detected. Backyard camera. My stomach twisted as I tapped the notification. The screen flickered and then the footage appeared. At first, it looked the same as always. A grainy image of my backyard. The dim glow of the porch light casting long shadows. But then I saw it. A figure. Standing right in front of the camera. My breath locked in my throat. It was too close, so close that its head almost touched the lens. My screen was filled with nothing but a pale, distorted face. No details. No features. Just smooth, blank skin where eyes and a mouth should have been. I dropped my phone, my heart hammering against my ribs. What the hell was that? I scrambled to pick up my phone again, my fingers shaking as I rewound the footage. But when I played it back, the figure was gone. The yard was empty. The timestamp showed the same time, the same moment, but now, there was nothing there. I checked the live feed. The backyard was still. The camera was working fine. No glitches. No malfunctions. But my body told me something different. I could feel something watching me. A new notification popped up. Motion detected. Front door camera. I felt sick. My hand hovered over the screen, every instinct screaming at me not to look. I tapped the notification. The camera feed loaded. Something was standing right outside my front door. And it was even closer now. The front door camera showed only a face. Too close. Far too close. Smooth, featureless skin stretched over a blank canvas where eyes, a nose, and a mouth should be. No details. No expression. Just an absence of a face. And it was staring at me. I couldn't move. My phone trembled in my hands as I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. The figure didn't shift, didn't tilt its head or blink. It simply existed, pressing against the lens as if it was trying to push through. Then the worst part. It moved. Not in a natural way. Not like a person stepping back or shifting position. It was like watching a glitch in a video. One moment it was inches from the lens, and in the next frame it was standing at the edge of my porch. Then another frame, the middle of my yard. And then, gone. The yard was empty. The street was still. I switched to the backyard feed, my pulse hammering. Motion detected backyard camera. The screen flickered. I expected to see it standing in the yard. But I was wrong. It wasn't outside anymore. It was inside the house. The camera in the hallway had captured it. The same featureless face, standing perfectly still in the dim glow of the night light. Not moving, not blinking, just waiting. I gripped the bat beside my bed, my hands slick with sweat. I wanted to run. I wanted to lock myself in the bathroom, barricade the door, anything to get away. But then the footage changed again. The figure shifted. One frame standing in the hallway. The next frame closer. Then closer. Then closer. Until the last frame showed nothing but a blank, pale face. Right in front of the camera. Then static. The feed went dead. A single notification popped up on my phone, and this time, I felt my stomach drop so fast I thought I was going to throw up. Motion detected. Bedroom camera. I wasn't watching through the screen anymore. I didn't need to, because I could feel it. Standing right behind me. The air behind me shifted. A pressure, subtle but suffocating, pressed against my back. I couldn't see it. I didn't want to see it. But I knew it was there. Standing too close. Right behind me. My phone slipped from my hands, hitting the floor with a dull thud. The bedroom camera feed was still open, the screen glowing faintly in the dark. I didn't need to pick it up. I knew what it would show. Me. And something else. Something standing so close that it should have been touching me. But it wasn't. It was just there. Waiting. A cold whisper of air brushed against my ear. Not a sound. Not a breath. Just the sensation of something pressing against the space I occupied. Then, it moved. Not a step. Not a shift. But suddenly, I felt it. Inches away from my face. I squeezed my eyes shut. If I turned around, if I looked, I knew I wouldn't be able to understand what I was seeing. Then, the lights flickered. I heard the floorboards creak. Not behind me, not in front of me, but everywhere. Like the walls themselves were stretching, bending, adjusting for something that wasn't supposed to be here. I forced my breath to steady, gripping the bat beside my bed, but it felt useless. I knew this thing wasn't afraid of me. A sound broke through the silence. A whisper, but not words, not a voice. It was my own breathing, coming from right in front of me. I snapped my eyes open, and I saw it. My reflection in the mirror. Except it wasn't moving. I swallowed hard, barely containing a scream. My own reflection stood still, watching me. Then, with a slow, unnatural motion, it smiled. Not a normal smile. Not an expression I had ever made before. It was too wide, too stretched, like my own face was being pulled apart. I stepped back, my breath coming in sharp gasps. My reflection didn't move with me. Then, it blinked. But not my eyes. The space where its face should have been. The smooth, empty skin where my eyes once were. It flickered, like static, like something trying to push through. Then I heard it. The voice, my own voice, but wrong. Too close. The mirror shattered, and the lights went out. The next morning, everything was normal. No broken glass. No distorted footage. No shadow standing behind me. But my phone had a single notification. One new motion alert. I hesitated before opening it. My fingers numb. The recorded footage played. The hallway. Empty. Then movement. Something stepped forward. Not a figure. Not a shadow. Just skin. Filling the entire screen. Too close. Way too close. Then the footage cut out. I turned off the cameras after that. But I still feel it. Right behind me. Always. Too close. I was reviewing last night's security footage when I noticed something strange. The camera in the hallway had captured me walking to the kitchen for a glass of water. Nothing unusual. Until I paused and looked closer. My shadow stretched along the floor as expected, cast perfectly by the dim light above. But there was something else. A second shadow. It wasn't from any furniture, and it wasn't mine. It moved slightly out of sync with me, just a fraction of a second slower, as if it were reacting rather than following. My heart pounded as I rewound the footage, staring hard at the screen. I stepped forward in the video and both shadows moved, but the second one was always just behind, just a little too slow, just a little too wrong. My breath hitched as I watched myself stop in the hallway. My real shadow stopped immediately, but the second one kept moving, just for a second, just long enough to notice, and then it snapped back into place like it had realized I was watching. My stomach twisted. I didn't remember seeing anything unusual last night. I didn't feel anything behind me, but as I stared at the footage, dread seeped into my bones. Something had been there, and worse, it knew I had noticed. My phone buzzed in my hand. A new notification. Motion detected. Hallway camera. My blood turned to ice. The timestamp read right now. I switched to the live feed with shaking fingers. The hallway was empty, but the shadow? It was still there, even though I wasn't. My stomach twisted into a knot. I wasn't in the hallway, but the shadow still stretched along the floor, shifting slightly as if it were breathing. My fingers hovered over my phone screen, my pulse hammering in my ears. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to check the other cameras. The kitchen empty, the living room empty, the front door locked. Everything seemed normal, except the hallway. The shadow didn't move like a normal shadow. It didn't shift with the light or stay connected to anything. It just existed. Then it moved. Not a flicker, not a trick of the light. Twitched, then stretched slightly toward the stairs. Toward me. My breath hitched. I was upstairs. It was downstairs. And it was trying to get closer. I clutched my phone, my fingers slick with sweat, watching in horror as the shadow peeled away from the wall and began to crawl forward. No footsteps, no sound, just darkness spilling over the floor like ink, moving in jerky, unnatural motions, coming toward the stairs. My body locked up, every instinct screaming at me to run, lock the door, do something, anything, before it reached me. But I didn't move, couldn't. I just kept watching as the shadow slithered up the first step. Then the second. Then the third. Closer. My breath came in short, shallow gasps as my phone vibrated violently in my hand. A new notification. Motion detected. Upstairs hallway camera. No. I forced my shaking fingers to switch to the upstairs feed. My bedroom door was slightly ajar. I could see just a sliver of the hallway outside. And then I saw it. A shadow stretching under my door. But I wasn't casting it. It flickered once, then slid further into the room. My hands clenched into fists. I could feel something pressing against the air, like the weight of another presence, unseen but undeniable. I squeezed my eyes shut, my breath ragged. I'm imagining this. I'm exhausted. It's not real. Then the floor creaked. Inside my room. I stopped breathing. It was here. The temperature plummeted. My skin prickling as if something had just stepped into my space. Unseen but unbearably close. My phone slipped from my grip, landing face up on the bed. The screen still displayed the camera feed. Still showed the hallway outside my door. Still showed the shadow. And then, before my eyes, it split. Two shadows now. One still in the hall. One inside my room. Right behind me. I felt it before I saw it. A dense, suffocating weight pressing against my back. Like the air had thickened. Like something unseen had stepped into my space. My entire body locked up. Don't turn around. Don't turn around. But my mind screamed the opposite. I had to see. I had to know. My phone still lay face up on the bed, the screen casting a dim glow in the dark. I forced myself to look at it, at the live feed still open. The hallway outside my door was empty now. But the shadow inside my room hadn't moved. It was still stretching across the floor, detached from any light source, as if it was cast by something that shouldn't exist. Then movement. Not from the floor. Not from the walls. But from the screen. My own reflection. The front-facing camera had switched on. And there, in the faint glow of the phone, I saw myself sitting on the bed. And behind me, the second shadow stood tall, stretching up the wall like something too big for the room, its shape shifting as if it was deciding what it wanted to be. No eyes, no mouth, just darkness. And then it leaned closer. My stomach twisted violently as I watched its formless head lower itself toward mine, like it was whispering something I couldn't hear. My own reflection sat frozen, wide-eyed, my breath coming in short, rapid gasps. I couldn't move. I was trapped in my own skin. Then, slowly, my reflection did something I hadn't. It smiled. A slow, unnatural curl of the lips, too wide, too knowing. My real mouth remained locked in terror, but the version of me on the screen, it wasn't afraid. It was enjoying this. A low hum filled my ears, deep and vibrating, like something was pushing into my thoughts, pressing against the inside of my skull. My vision blurred. The room was shifting. The walls felt wrong. The floor stretched beneath me, tilting slightly, like reality itself was beginning to warp around the shadow's presence. I tried to blink, to breathe, to move, but the reflection did it first. I blinked, and the moment I did, everything snapped back. Normal. My breath hitched violently in my throat. The room was exactly as it had been before. No shadow, no movement, just me, alone, sitting on my bed, the phone still resting where I had dropped it. But something felt off. The air was different. My body felt lighter, as if something had just stepped out of it. And then I saw it. The camera feed. I was still in the frame, still sitting there. But the shadow? It wasn't behind me anymore. It was in the hallway, and it was shaped like me. Couldn't breathe. The camera feed showed me sitting on my bed. But my shadow wasn't mine anymore. It stood in the hallway now, just outside my door, perfectly still, perfectly wrong. My chest tightened as I watched the figure, my mind racing. How is this possible? What the hell is happening? The figure in the hallway didn't move at first. It just stood there, its outline eerily familiar, an exact replica of me, but made of pure darkness. The shape of my shoulders, my head, even the way it tilted slightly, as if mimicking my every hesitation. My fingers hovered over the screen. Switch cameras. Look at another room. Look anywhere but there. But something in me knew. If I looked away, it would move. And it wouldn't stop until it was inside. My throat went dry as I swallowed the lump of fear clogging my airway. Do something. Now. My hand trembled as I reached for my bedside lamp. If I turned on the light, maybe the hallway camera glitched. My stomach lurched. The shadow was gone. My pulse pounded so violently I thought I might pass out. I flipped to the next feed, living room, kitchen, front door, empty. The hallway? Empty. No sign of it. But I knew it was still here. Somewhere in the house. Closer than before. I forced myself to move, my legs stiff and unsteady as I rose from the bed. My limbs felt strange, disconnected, like I was fighting against something pulling me back down. I needed to check the hallway. I needed to see with my own eyes. Every step toward the door sent icy dread down my spine. My fingers gripped the knob, my breath ragged. What if it's standing right there? The thought made my skin crawl. What if it's waiting for me to open the door? But I had to know. I couldn't just sit here and wait for it to come to me. I clenched my jaw, tightening my grip. 1, 2, 3. I swung the door open. Nothing. The hallway stretched before me, empty. But it didn't feel empty. The air was thick, suffocating, like something had just been here, like something had just moved. I stepped forward, my skin prickling as if unseen eyes were crawling over me. Something's wrong. I turned back toward my bedroom and stopped cold. My shadow. It wasn't facing the right direction. The light from my room cast a long shape across the floor, but it wasn't angled toward the hallway. It was facing me, watching me. My throat clenched as I stepped backward, but my shadow didn't move with me. It stayed frozen, stretched along the wall, still as death. Then it twitched, a jerky, unnatural shudder, like it was trying to step out of place. My hands went numb. My body screamed at me to run, to turn the lights on, to do something. Then the shadow lifted its head. And for the first time, it wasn't just a shape anymore. It had a face. My face. And it smiled. The grin stretched across its face. My face, but wrong, too wide, too knowing. My stomach clenched as a sickening wave of nausea rolled through me. This isn't possible. My real shadow, the one that should have been mine, was still attached to my feet, cast faintly by the bedroom light behind me. But the second shadow? The other me? It was independent now, standing upright along the wall like something that had learned to pull itself free. And it was staring right at me. My breath came in short gasps, my muscles locking up as I tried to comprehend what I was seeing. The face on the wall didn't move, but I could feel something shifting beneath it, like a presence pressing through the surface of reality itself. Then it blinked, a flicker of motion, a fraction of a second. But I saw it. The shadow me's eyes opened. Not holes. Not empty darkness. Eyes. My eyes. And they were watching me. I stumbled backward into my room, my shoulder slamming into the doorframe. The second I moved, the shadow's expression changed. The grin widened. It knows. It knows I see it. I slammed my hand against the light switch, flooding the room with brightness. Shadows can't exist without darkness. It'll disappear. It has to. But it didn't. It didn't even flinch. The moment the light came on, the shadow stepped forward. No, not forward. It peeled itself from the wall with a sickening slowness, its movements jerky, disjointed, like something unused to having a body. The moment its feet touched the floor, a sharp pain exploded in my chest, like someone had hooked their fingers into my ribs and was pulling. I choked on a breath, staggering, my vision blurring. My limbs felt weaker, heavier, like I was being drained piece by piece. The shadow straightened. For the first time, it stood at its full height, exactly my height, my exact shape, my exact face. But its expression was hungry. I turned to run, too late. My hand clamped around my wrist. Cold. Wrong. Not mine. I barely had time to scream before everything snapped. Darkness. I woke up gasping. Bright sunlight streamed through the blinds. The warmth of morning filled the room, as if nothing had ever happened. My sheets were tangled. My breath came in uneven bursts. A nightmare. Had to be. I swallowed hard, trying to shake the lingering sense of dread curling in my gut. I glanced down at my hands, flexing my fingers. I felt normal, but something still wasn't right. I turned my head toward the mirror hanging on the closet door, and froze. The reflection showed my room, my bed, my walls, but not me. The mirror was empty. I wasn't there. I shot up from the bed, my heart slamming against my ribs. My hands shook as I reached toward the mirror, panic clawing at my throat. Then, slowly, the reflection changed. Something stepped into view. A figure. Me. But not me. The second shadow. It stood in my place, staring back at me with those two wide eyes, that too familiar smile. Then, it raised a hand, and waved.